Biden's gas pipeline. Biden said he was going to stop the Keystone pipeline, and I did. And that's the reason prices went up. Folks, let's get something straight here. The Keystone pipeline was 2 years away and had been 2% finished. Give me a break. Give me a break. This law is going to put an end to all of that. It's going to put people in a much different position to be able to determine their own judgments about when to sell their cattle, when they should. We're going to change things. Why is it closed? Because for the last 2 weeks, because the moment it opens, it will be disbanded. You hear me? It will blow up.
It will blow up.
Yeah. All of them are great. They're so great. The first one, to me, gets me riled up because it's just more of this whole argument that Biden is not to blame for gas prices rising, and it's just so untrue on so many levels. I mean, it's very frustrating.
Well, yeah, and who delayed, by the way? He says it was 2 years away. Well, first off, we're now 14 months into his presidency.
Yeah, so we would be pretty close.
We would be pretty close. And who delayed it before then? It was the left. The left dragged their feet and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed.
Greta Thunberg, I say.
So, the infamous Greta Thunberg. So, I mean, that's ridiculous just on its face because the left is clearly responsible for that. It's also like when he says that, I read that as his acknowledging, hey, actually, if it had gone through, gas prices would have been cheaper. Otherwise, why say, hey, it was still 2 years away?
I feel like
right?
they're honestly grasping at any straw they can possibly think of to try to make it seem as if Joe Biden is not responsible for these gas prices. I don't even think they're thinking about the implications of their words. I think they're like, oh, well, the first thing we're going to go with is that it's Putin's fault. And then people were like, well, prices were actually going up significantly before Putin invaded Russia. And then they're like, oh, we got to come up with a new excuse. Then they're like, oh, actually, it's because the oil companies aren't drilling. And then the oil companies are like, you're lying about us.
We're drilling as fast as we can. In fact, we're opening new wells.
No, they call that time for another misleading graph from the White House.
Yeah, they just, whatever they can come up with, they just make a graph, they change their arguments, whatever they can do. And I don't even think that they are thinking about, wow, this argument that we make is now kind of undermining this other argument that we previously made. They're just going from point to point, trying to find something that sticks.
Michael and I were talking about that yesterday. Michael Austin, our supervising reporter, we were talking about a report CNN did on, it's kind of a quasi-fact check on why gas prices are rising, and the entire point of it was that it's not Joe Biden's fault. But it's absolutely, it's gas prices. What they like to say is that gas prices were artificially depressed because of COVID, and that's true. But if you go back to when you go back to just a couple months before COVID, the average gas price in the U.S. was $2.36. So that's still way cheaper than it is right now, and that was before COVID slowed everything down. So we had a searing hot economy. I mean, burning up economy. No unemployment to speak of. And gas was $2.36 a gallon. So this is clearly incorrect. Additionally, you did have Trump kind of putting the squeeze on China, which would have reduced demand for petrol, which would have kept prices down. And Trump kept Putin in check, and it's the instability in the world right now that's driving oil prices up. So it is Putin. It is, well, it's Putin's fault too, but it is Biden's fault.
That's the thing that gets me is like whatever avenue they try to go down to make an excuse for Joe Biden, it all ties back to Joe Biden eventually. You can say, oh, it's Putin's fault. Okay, well, Joe Biden's inability to, present a strong American image is part of the reason why Putin said, I'm going to go do whatever I want.